If you've ever been caught up in thinking or acting against the tide of common sense, then this has been a really unsettling week. It's been a really unsettling week for me. And yet, here I am. It's the third Sunday in Advent, and Nelson Mandela is to be buried today, and I don't know why I'm standing here talking to you. It feels quite the wrong place for me to be today. I keep hearing in my head Archbishop Desmond Tutu's words, "Tell the world, show the world," that we can live Mandela's dream of a rainbow nation, of a just nation, of an inclusive nation. He uttered this challenge during his address at the memorial service for Nelson Mandela, where all the great and all the least were gathered. What do I have to say to you that you don't already know? And to show you anything, well, you'd have to leave this beautiful building with me. Last week, I left this building wanting to scream and shout and let it all out, as my great nieces want to say at times when anger and frustration rise in her. I heard Bishop John remind us that the axe was at the root of the tree and there was no time at all to waste in getting our stuff sorted. But, like good Christians, on a Sunday, we were quietly enjoying the beauty of the building and the beautifully modulated sound of controlled voices, reading and praying, and of course for us, here at St. Matthew's, the capacity to luxuriate in the glory of the music. I loved it all. But gradually the feeling I should be doing something grew in me. I should be putting my body on the line somewhere, as we were challenged to do back in the 70s and 80s, in the days of protest, when the tangata whenua would confront us weekly with, "Don't tell me what you're going to do, show me." Or, "Walk the talk." I was feeling discombobulated by the stillness and the expectant waiting of Advent. This week, the Gospel reading catches up something of that sense of frustration and the need to be doing something that I experienced last week. John the Baptist demands from prison that Jesus explain himself. He must have been feeling frustrated, being in prison and out of the action that was beginning to unfold as Jesus' ministry took shape, that ministry that was so different from his own. And Jesus, with some sharpness it seems to me, tells the messengers from John to go back and tell John what they were seeing. And then Matthew reports that Jesus continues with a bit of a tell-off, saying that those who don't take offense at the healing, the life-giving activity that they see, will be blessed. And we know from our time in history and from later stories that there were those who were annoyed with Jesus' healing and feeding and life-enhancing activities, so annoyed that eventually they killed him. But Jesus was keen to get on with what needed to be done. He was doing what needed to be done to begin a process of change in people's lives and in their circumstance. The links between Jesus' ministry and the prophet Isaiah are clear as we hear the two readings side by side. And the images Matthew uses to tell us about Jesus' ministry activity resonate with those from the prophet that describe the transformation of the wilderness, the transformation of the desert, the transformation of those who are saved, who work for justice, for righteousness. Matthew is at pains to convince his hearers that Jesus was the one they had been waiting for, the one that would bring about a transformation in the world that they knew. Jesus, the Messiah, the transforming one, has come. Don't tell me, show me the saving work of justice making was the challenge that has motivated thousands to join protests and sign petitions and take actions to bring about justice-making change. Tell him what you see, Jesus says to John's messengers. Tell him the blind see, the lame walk, the outcasts are included, and those who have lost hope are inspired again. Tell him that. How can that be anything but good news? But Jesus turns again to the message, as the message carriers go back to John. He turns to the crowd, and accusingly he quizzes them. What did you go out to the wilderness to look at? What did you go out to see? A reed shaken in the wind? A prophet in soft robes? What did you go out to see? And it's those questions that cut right to my heart when I read about report after report on child poverty, on inadequate wages, on the lack of social housing, including for the elderly, on the disproportionate numbers of Maori in prison, and on women raped and abused by those whom they know, and children by those charged with their care. What do we expect to see when we look about our community and at our city and our land? We don't need to go and look at them over and over again in the wilderness that we have created for them, in the desert places that we've pushed them to. But we do need transforming action. We don't need to be told over and over how dreadful life is for some. We know that. But we do need you and me to be concerned, to be saying no more, to be calling a halt to abuse and exploitation of people and land. We do need you and me to demand and to be prepared to take action to dismantle the insidious network of attitudes and behaviours and expectations that continue to push members of our society into places of wilderness. Our little country was laughed at when we refused hospitality to nuclear ships and submarine. We said no. We took action, and many people put their bodies on the line. We stopped those warships endangering our cities. We added the weight of our little land to the world movement to de-escalate nuclear armaments. Mandela and those of the ANC put their bodies on the line for justice and were imprisoned, silenced, so the power holders of the day thought. Anti-apartheid protesters acting in solidarity with Mandela and those around him in this country were jeered at and held in contempt by many. Waitangi protesters demanding the treaty be honoured and an end to racism here were ridiculed and imprisoned. Those who want to save whales and stop deep-sea oil drilling, who want to stop further deforestation and pollution of our land, are often marginalised and laughed at. Those who demand a living wage are dismissed as unrealistic. But change does happen. And now these concerns are hallmarks of our national identity that we are learning to guard. These things are part of the story we tell, part of the vision of a life and a land that we want to and aspire to. On this third Sunday of Advent, this third Sunday of preparation for the Christmas celebration of life and hope, I want to paraphrase again Jesus' question. What are you looking for? What do you expect to see? If life and hope is to come to the wilderness places that are to be found amongst our neighbours, and if the desert places in our communities are to blossom abundantly, we will need to ask ourselves that question. We will need to ask ourselves what we expect to see. And we need also to ask ourselves, what is the story we are prepared to proclaim? What is the story of life and hope in our land that we will be so bold as to proclaim? As Christmas rapidly approaches, and as we wait expectantly for life and hope to be born anew amongst us, be assured of this, for this I do know. We are expected to walk the talk. Those who look at we who proclaim the good news of God's loving ways expect to see what we do and not just hear what we say. Live the gospel. Be prepared to take action for life. Amen.